Welcome to the first special guest episode. This is the first episode, so I'm still pretty awkward, but it'll get better over time. This intro was filmed a few days after the actual interview because I forgot to record an intro. But anyways, this interview is split into two parts, and in this episode we'll be discussing education, spending and income, growing up in a rough area, immigrant parents, and more. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have our very first special guest, Cassandra Lopez.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah. Thank you for being on the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a first year PhD student in communication sciences. I have a background in speech language pathology, so I did my undergraduate degree in communication sciences and psychology, and then I went to get my master's in speech language pathology with a bilingual track, so Spanish English populations and communities, and then I came back to do my PhD in communication sciences, still with the focus in speech language pathology with a concentration in bilingual populations.
Very exciting. Now, I know a lot of those degrees take a long time, so talk about your experience. I know we grew up pretty close, even in the same areas, and I think a lot of our friends we grew up with don't have that experience when going through long periods of school, because you've roughly been about 20 years of your life in school, and I think that's a lot for most people. Talk about your experience with that.
I think that's true. I haven't really thought about 20 plus years. What I think about is more like 10 years because I think of like elementary school, middle school, high school. That's like you have to do it, right? That's the expectation, at least to earn a high school diploma. But that's true. A lot of people don't earn that. So for me, it's like, okay, that's the first part. And then the second part is you go off to college. You go at least minimum 4 years. That was my goal, 4 years at least minimum. And then because I chose speech language pathology, the requirement is to have a master's. So I'm like, okay, I need at least 2 more years. So I knew 6 years was kind of like the rough idea, at least after high school. But then going into the PT, I'm like, that's gonna be 10 years. I'm like, whoa, did not have that. I didn't imagine that. And I think a lot of people don't imagine being in school for such a long time, and I don't think they choose to be in school because there's a possibility of earning money. So if you're a student, then at least in PhD you earn some type of income, which is nice, but it's not as much as like what you can earn outside of school. And I think a lot of people have that pressure of like, I need to earn a living, I can't choose school, or they might not have the same opportunities of like having scholarships or grant money to cover the cost of school and living. So the idea of even continuing school for such a long time is not really realistic.
Yeah, and how much roughly did you make at your job as an SLP in, I would say, a bigger town, even though it was in a major city, compared to how much you make as a PhD student?
So SLP, just for anyone who doesn't know what that is it's a speech language pathologist. So my first year was my clinical fellowship year. So you are required to do that and you're still working under the supervision of someone else. But it's technically your first job. So I earned 50 an hour. So I worked minimum 35 hours a week, and any overtime was paid at 75 an hour, which was, I think, pretty good starting off. Especially not having a job before that. So I think per week I got paid like average 2,000 something. So that's pretty nice because a month it was like 4 grand. And I was like, oh, it's pretty good. So compared to now, I get paid 31,400 for 12 months. So roughly like each month, I think I end up making 2,500 a month. So it's like half of what I used to make. So that's a big difference because I think getting my first job and getting that money, I'm like, oh, now I can buy all the things that I could never buy before. And now having to go back and not being able to buy all the things that I want, I feel like it can be challenging, but not as hard because growing up we didn't have that much money. So I feel like I knew that year, like that first year working, it was going to be like my free year. Like I have money now, I can buy all the things that I want, try to, you know, I get to spoil myself, and then now I'm back. Reality. I don't have all the money anymore, so I have to be more intentional about how I use my money.
Yeah, I get that. I remember when I first started interning at a big accounting firm, we were paid hourly. And that was like years ago, back in like 2017, 2018. And our hourly rate, I think, equal to around like 30 something, which at that time was very high. And we had overtime. So a lot of my paycheck was like really big, more than I made actually in full time. And I think I spent a lot of it preparing for a full time job in that sense, where I spent a lot of money in like clothing, outfits, like a work related, because right out of college, I didn't have many like formal clothes, things for a job, or like I would say like the whole setup. And I think that's where a lot of my money went. How about you when you first like started getting the real taste of money? Like,
That's a good
where
question.
did
I
it
don't
all
even know
go?
where that money went. It flew. It really did. I think a lot of it was skincare. Because there's a lot of nice skincare out there, and I think I wanted to try a lot of things for a very long time, but I'm like, I can't afford that. Like a cleanser can be like $40+. One cleanser, like a moisturizer is even more. A toner, like a serum, like it adds up. So a lot of it was in skincare. I think a lot of it was also on clothing. I think I really do like clothes. Um, so I was also trying to build up my wardrobe. So I think I spent a lot of like what they say, creating my capsule kind of wardrobe. So like what are the basics that I need? I'm like, there's a lot of clothes that I have, but I don't have the basics. So I'm like, okay, I need to get this type of like t-shirt, I need to get blouses, I need to get dress pants, I need to get um accessories. I think that was another thing. But now thinking back, I think it was money well spent because I still use the stuff today. But I didn't. Now I know like what I could have used the money for other than clothes. I think accessories, like I did like belts and stuff. But I think I would have liked to spend more money on like, I like jewelry, spend on like real gold, and I can't wear like fake gold in my ears because they get infected. So I'm like, man, I could have bought like a nice pair of earrings because I've owned these for 15+ years. They're the only ones I wear. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that? Where now that you're more of a fixed income rather than of a salary and like hourly based, how does it impact like what you're buying every day, like in terms of like priorities for food, accessories, or any other types of expenses?
Um, Definitely don't buy clothes as much anymore. I think I only buy clothes when it's like special occasion, like really special occasion. So like my brother got married, so I'm like, okay, I'll get a new outfit. And it was an outfit that I knew I could wear like every single day too. So it wasn't something like, oh, I can only wear once in a while. Um, but for your sure, the priority is in buying food, or paying rent. Honestly, like half of the money, more than half of my check goes into paying rent. So I have to make sure that the rent is paid. I got to make sure that the Wi-Fi is paid. I got to make sure that electricity is paid. So that's kind of first, and then making sure that I buy groceries, um, and not eat out a lot. So I think I didn't realize how much I ate out. Well, to me, eating out a lot means like once, twice a week. I think that's a lot. It's cutting it down to maybe once every 2 weeks is the goal. Maybe once a month if you really are trying to cook at home, but not eating out as much anymore. Not spending money on clothes, shoes, things that I don't need them to survive, basically. Yeah.
And I think that's a very hard like change for most people when they have to stop living a certain lifestyle. Just how I wouldn't say it's a downgrade for you, but it's definitely a more tightening schedule, like budget. I mean, where you're used to one like lifestyle and now you have to shift back to another one because you've been a student for a while and you had a brief taste of uh like more money and a real job that pays more. And I think for most people that can be jarring. How did that impact you, like emotionally, like seeing that, oh, now my bank account is low and it's probably gonna stay like that for a while, but you enjoy going to school and that's worth the sacrifice?
Well, I think it was a hard transition, I think. Not too hard in the sense that, like, because I only had money for like what year? Not even a year, like less than a year, because I worked at the school system, so we only are in school for like 8, 9 months. Well, I did summer school, so that was different, but it wasn't like a complete full year, so I kind of already had the idea of like, okay, this is not gonna be forever. And when I started thinking about going back to school, I'm like, I gotta watch out, like, really think about like this is not gonna be a forever thing, at least for now, and just have to be very purposeful on how I use my money. So because I didn't grow up with money, I feel like it wasn't very hard to go back because I'm like, oh, I've only done this. Like I said, it was like my free time. So I already knew it was like my period to spend my money however I wanted without really thinking about like, oh, I gotta save a lot, even though I did put some in savings because I'm like, you never know. And going back to school and having kind of like that tighter budget, I think it wasn't too hard because one, I had been in school for such a long time, so I was used to that. And two, like I grew up without money, so I already knew about that. So it wasn't too hard. And now it's like, oh, that's normal. Like you really never have money. I think that's the thing for a lot of students. Like if you're a student, you know you don't really have that much money, unless your parents are supporting you. Then that's a different story.
Yeah, and then going back to like growing up without money, I think most people have experienced that. But talk about your situation since we grew up or in the same area in back of the yards in Chicago.
I was raised by my mom, by herself, and she raised my brother, and she raised me. And we didn't have a lot of money in the sense that like we lived in back of the yards, right? So we lived in an attic. That's the apartment that we owned. So I grew up and living in the attic for like 11 years, and then it was all about getting the basics, right? Like you need food, you need supplies for school, like you need your uniform because we wore uniforms like the entire literally I wore uniforms till like the end of high school. So making sure that there was money for that and you don't really spend money going out. Um but I think she tried though. Like on the weekends that we went to church, then we're like, okay, we're gonna get like Dunkin' or McDonald's after. So at least once a week we had something to look forward to. And but like things about like I think clothes was a big one. Like we only got uniforms, but like new clothes, I don't think we ever really got. And like for like Christmas, we only got one gift. And I thought that was a thing. Like you only get one gift in Christmas, like from Santa Claus at least. And she tried to really like get something, I guess, big or meaningful to us. So I know one year I got an iPod. I was like, oh snap, that's crazy. Imagine having an iPod back then. And I didn't know how to use it, but it was nice having it because I liked music and I had my speaker and everything. So it was really nice. Or like if you wanted something, you know you couldn't get it. So it's like up to you to earn the money to buy it yourself. So I think that was instilled in me very young. Like if I want something, I gotta buy it myself with my own money. So then I always try to find ways to make money. I know like you know those Scholastic bookstore papers or like magazines where you order books. I would tell my cousins like, hey, you want to order a book? You gotta pay shipping and handling or something like because I'm gonna put the order in for you. And I just try to make any type of money to like have savings for me. I think it was like fifth grade. I made my own bracelets and I sold them on the school bus. That was pretty good business, man. I could still do it now. They were really nice. They were like flower and I like made them by hand and everything. And I would just be like, hey, you want a bracelet? I made my own catalog on my computer because yeah, I needed a computer for a project. So then Santa gave me some money. So I thought, okay, I can buy a computer. So then I told my mom, like, I need it for school. And she made it happen. So we got a computer and I needed a printer to print the stuff that I needed for a project. So I had a printer. So then by fifth grade, I already had the stuff. So I'm like, oh, I can make a catalog on on my computer and print it out, and I did. And then I would go on the school bus and I would show people like, hey, do you want to see these bracelets? Do you want to buy one? And then I would sell them for like $1. And I remember I made like $5 in 1 week. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of money. So then I saved that money up and then kind of grew up into like, I need to work to make money to buy what I want.
Yeah, especially seeing the environment that, for people who don't know how back the yards is, it's a rough area. And I think it wasn't as rough back then, but it still was something, a neighborhood you don't really walk around at night or really try to avoid. And how do you think that influenced you in your life, seeing a lot of people either in gangs or some type of criminal activity, and then most people that do stay away from it don't really go out to college, to these higher educations or trade schools even. A lot of them get stuck in these areas either with either factory jobs or other lower skilled work that doesn't pay out as much to live a comfortable life.
For sure, like, well, where I lived, there was a bunch of gang activity. Like, I lived like the house where I lived, it was like one house and then it was a park, so it's nice. So we could go to the park pretty often because it was like right there. But like sometimes we couldn't go because there's like gang members like outside, and you have to take care of your safety. So when I saw like people that I knew who their siblings were in the gangs, and I'm like, okay, like doesn't seem like I want to go that route. Like I don't want to hang out with them. Like you never know what's gonna happen. And then actually one of my classmates, he had a much older brother who was in a gang who actually got killed. And I remember how sad he was and like how devastated the whole family was. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And I was like, I hope the classmate that I had doesn't end up in the same place. And I don't think he did, but seeing how people that I knew like were involved in that or their family was involved in that, you could really see how it made them have like a small vision of their life. Like all I can do is be in this and that's all I need to survive in the world, or there's nothing better than this lifestyle. And I was like kind of like, nope, mm, no thank you. And even girls, right? Like you usually often think of like a gang, it's all men, well at least in that area, but no, there's like women or girls that would be like, oh, I'm gonna date a gang member, like, oh, that's my boyfriend. I'm like, okay, good for you.
They would be proud of it.
Yeah, they would be proud of it, and I'm like, I'm good. I'd rather be by myself. Also, you're so young, why are you dating at that age? I think like that's not the priority. And I think for me, one, because I saw that so many people were going into that and it didn't end up well. Like, I don't want part of that. Also, like, my mom was working so hard to try to get my brother and me, like, the best life that we could. So, like, why would I disrespect the work that she's doing by getting involved in that? That was another piece. So then I'm like, well, what I need to do is work hard. And how do I work hard? By doing good at school. And that's kind of like how I focus in school. And I'm like, literally, my only job is to do well in school. What else am I going to do? School is going to get me to the next thing, high school. After high school, college. After college, I thought it would be over after 4 years, and it's not. But it's getting me to where I want to be.
That makes sense. How we grew up and how it influences our dreams. I think even though we grew up in around the same area, I saw a different perspective of people because I went to a smaller elementary school where there was very minimal gang presence, if any at all, just because my whole 8th grade class, which we've been through since I transferred in at like 3rd grade, was around like 35 people. So there was minimal conflict between everyone. But what I saw that most people in the class had very small glimpses of the world where the neighborhood felt like the whole world. Well, me and my roughly like it was like 2 friends, we like saw beyond that. We had already like seen news. We like heard about iPods and like really new technology coming out. And I think that really opened our minds out that there's more to the world than this area, that there's better places that are possible for everyone. We're not sure, we weren't sure how to get there, but we knew that we wanted more than this. And I feel like most people in areas like that either lose hope or give up on trying to have a better life in that sense. Why do you think that is? And why do you think you didn't feel?
I think I do agree. I think that people think that all they can do is like live in that bubble, and I think it's a bubble. I think people feel comfortable in the community, and it was comfortable. I'm not gonna say like, yeah, there were skanks and everything, but I feel like I felt safe and unsafe. Unsafe because you never know who's gonna not the gangs within the community didn't target the people living there. They targeted other gangs or people who were not from the area. So you were always scared because you thought you were gonna be like caught in the middle of it. Now that was the fear. The fear wasn't that they were around because you were actually felt protected. They knew you, like they would say hi, like good morning. They were nice people. But I think because people get comfortable in that are like, oh, this is my one, if it's a gang member, so I'm like, this is my territory. I'm not moving out of here. They're gonna let it go. So that's their side. But other people living around there, one, if it's like children of people immigrating here, I think that they're like, oh, well, I grew up here. I'm gonna stay here. This is all I can do. And if they are pressured to make money to support the family, I think you go into the route of like, I need to work and I need to find a job now. And the jobs that are available now tend to be, like you said, hard labor, like physical labor jobs. So they go into that, and I feel like they the longer you stay in that, the kind of the more distant the idea of getting out of the community becomes, because you're like, well, I'm already here, I'm already making money, like I'm living a pretty decent life. What else do I want? What more could I get? And I think they're like, I'm here, I'll just stay here. And I think for me, I'm like, this can't possibly be the best you can do. Like, there has to be more than this area. So I always try to work to see like, what can I do next? Where can I go? And when I was younger, this is weird, off topic and on topic. My aunt used to move apartments, I think often, and I don't get it. I didn't know why, and now I know, like, your lease is up after a year, right? So then she would move like every year or every few years to a new apartment. I'm like, that's so cool. She gets to move somewhere new. And then we never got to move. We lived for the attic like for like the 11 years, and I was like, oh, I want to move somewhere. I get bored of things very quickly, so I wanted change. And I'm like, well, we're living here for so long. How can I change that? How can I move somewhere else? And one, my mom got the chance to buy a house. So that was the first time we moved. And I was so excited because I'm like, we get to go somewhere that's not here. Not because I didn't like it, but because I wanted change. I wanted something different. So that's a me thing, a personal thing. Like, I like change. I get bored easily. People are different, right? Some people really like staying in, like, being comfortable, and they don't want to go to the unknown. And that's true, right? We don't want to, if we're scared of what we don't know. And I feel like for me, it's like I am. At the same time, I get excited. So then I'm like, well, I'm going to push. We're going to move somewhere else. Cool. I'll do this. And then once we moved, I'm like, okay, well, I was already at the school that I had been at the school that I was attending. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to go to a new school, because I had already been going. So it was just a move of the house, which was nice. And then when I started thinking about like, okay, where else could I what is another opportunity where I get to move other than a house? I'm like, college. I get to go somewhere new. So then I started working to try to make it to college. And I remember at the beginning, like, my family would ask me like, oh, are you really going out of state? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, where do you want to go? I'm like, I don't know, Pennsylvania, like California, like Ohio. I'm like, Indiana. I don't care. Wisconsin. I'll go anywhere, but I just want to go somewhere new. And I never lost that. And I feel like other people in the community, they're like, if they don't have one, two, it's there's so many factors, because I was doing good in school because that was my job, and I didn't have any other pressure to have to support financially my family, right? All I had to do was, if I wanted to make money, I made something, bracelets, and I sold bracelets for myself. But other people, I think they have other pressures or other expectations. So then, or they might not like school. I like school. A lot of people don't like school. So that makes it harder. Like if you're not succeeding in school, then you're like, oh, I succeed at labor work. This is where I'm good at. And I feel like they lose hope of like, oh, I'm going to go to college. And they're like, I make money this way. And I feel like some people limit themselves there and they don't even think about like I could go to trade school. Like I'm really good at this labor work. Maybe I could go to trade school and make even more money having a certification. Either because they don't think about it, and also it's because no one tells you that. When you're younger, they're like, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. They don't give you options. Other than college, it's no joke when you're younger. Either you're in a gang, you're in a job, or you go to school. And I feel like that was very like narrow.
Yeah, especially with the I think the lack of internet, it was like we didn't know what was possible in the world because the internet like just became more accessible. But I think one of the big things that really I think drove me to do better in life was moving. I think with my mom we moved around like 5 times, and we ended up living at a house that was abandoned. And I think that really showed me, wow, like this is the area I'm gonna live in, which was like the whole block had like over half the houses were abandoned. And I was like, wow, this is what you see in like books and movies of a bad area. But I didn't feel like I was in a bad area because I felt like, oh, like the house is gonna get better. It was like super old and it wasn't destroyed like much, but it was old. And then seeing eventually in high school, like where I became more aware because I'd been to downtown and but I think seeing downtown at high school really made me feel like, wow, we live so close to the city. There's so much possible. Like all these people around us want to do something with their lives. And I think that's a very like drastic difference than in the south side of Chicago. Like, because we went to high school together, and even people in high school, like they wanted a better life, but most of them either didn't want to try or led different paths, or along the way they stumbled and couldn't like get out of like the ditch. And I think for me, a lot of it came back to like my mom, which I was also raised by a single parent. The way she worked as a janitor, cleaning stores and things like that. And I think seeing that every day and also working with her, like picking up trash, like the way people treat me, gave me motivation that a lot of people lack, even in situations, the similar situations. Something about them doesn't trigger or internalize that. Wow, this is a bad situation. Like I need to figure out how. And not only can I make my life better, but my parents, my family's lives better. And I think for you, like, how do you think you felt like you wanted to really make your family's life better? Like, what really turned that point? Like, was there a specific moment or like overall, like throughout the years, you felt, oh, okay, like there's still violence here. Like, we're not anywhere else different. Like, it keeps happening. Like, I want to live a peaceful life.
So, like I said, like my only job was to do well in school. My mom was working all the time, so she worked from I think like 1 p.m. till like 10:30 p.m. every day. So she only took us to like the bus stop in the morning, and then we didn't see her for the rest of the day. So we only saw her in the morning. So my aunt and my uncle would take care of us like throughout the day. So one, I didn't see her for a long time, like when I was younger. So I was like, oh, you need to move your schedule. You need to move your schedule. I'm like, that kind of sucks when you have a job and you don't have flexibility in your schedule. One, that's already motivation to be like, I need a job where I can have some flexibility in my schedule, where I have time to spend with my family and still have, work and make money. That was one. And then the other one, you said that other people, when you worked with your mom, other people kind of treated you bad. And probably I feel like they couldn't believe that you could do any better. For me, it was my family. Like, they're like, well, you're a woman, so you have to learn how to cook. You need to learn how to clean. You need to learn how to raise kids because you're going to be serving a husband. I was like, I'm not doing that. No way. I'm not going to do that. Like, what kind of life is that? If you choose to, okay, but not for me. I was like, that's not what I want. So that was another piece of the kind of the motivation. Like, I had uncles be like, you're gonna end up pregnant with some gang member's baby. I'm like, why would you even say that to someone? And I think it was like, they didn't believe that I could do something better, and they didn't believe that I can get out of the area. And I think that really kind of made me be like, oh, well, no, I can do better. Just watch. Just let me be. I'll prove you wrong. And I'm that kind of person, like, push me. Or like test me,
Try
like
me.
try me, and I'll prove you wrong. So then that was another piece also that motivated me. Like, well, I'm not gonna stay here. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Like, for senior year, well, we went to the same high school, so the senior trip to China.
Oh yeah, that was
And
crazy.
literally, even before, because my cousin went to that high school, so I already knew about it. So even like 8th grade, I'm like, okay, my goal is to go to China when I'm a senior in high school. So I'm like, I need to start working and saving money. And I did. I started saving money little by little because I'm like, I want to go to the trip and it's really expensive. And I remember telling like my family, and they're like, I want to go to China. I want to learn Mandarin. Like, I want to do. They're like, you're not even gonna go. Like, you're not gonna learn it. Like, how are you gonna communicate with people? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, always doubting my skills and my potential. And I'm like, why would you do that? So then it pushed me even harder to be like, no, I'm just gonna do good. So then, right, doing good, like, I'm helping myself, but I'm helping my family too. Like, with my mom, like, now she can say that, we're going to school, we're trying to make money, even though I can't support her yet. I'm trying to get there, but I have more flexibility, I think, in scheduling. Like, if something comes up, then I'll be like, okay, like, at least I can call, compared to her job where, like, she can't call because she's working in the factory with the machinery. She can't have access to her phone. She has a set schedule. Like, there's a lot that she has no say in, when compared to me, I'm like, I make my own schedule. Like, I choose what I want to do. Like, it's so much different. And she has to work in the factory because that's kind of like the only option. I have the opportunity to do whatever I choose to and follow whatever passion I have. So I think it's just when people, I think, underestimate me, that's where the motivation comes in. And why not? I'm already here. Like, why not do something better with my life? I feel like I could change the world. You can't change the world. You just have to believe it and find a way to do it. And if it's not on your own, with other people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think a lot of motivation also came externally, like from you, like how people treated me, and I think a lot of it was they looked down upon me because I was sweeping or picking up trash outside, and I was like, oh man, these people don't know who I am. Like, I always thought them in my head, and even now, like even recently, like even though my net worth has passed $1 million, like I occasionally still helped my mom like a year or two ago, and people would like treat me so bad. They're like, you shouldn't be sweeping right here, or something like that. I was like, wow, oh man, I'm like, and then someone at one point tried to give me like advice on something, and they were taking out a loan because it was at a loan store. And I was like, this person's really trying to tell me something. I'm like, this person's about to take out a loan. Like, I don't know who they think they are, trying to talk down to me. Like, even to my mom, like they always talk down to her, even though she probably like has a better life than most of these workers that think they're at a high class job because they work at a teller or something like that. Can you tell us more about like your goal in life and dream, even though we have similar ones? growing up from the areas we grew up in, like most people can assume like where the general direction goes, but can you tell us what it is?
So my big goal in life is to create a nonprofit organization that helps support underrepresented communities, specifically children. Growing up in Back of the Arts, there was not a lot of programs that expose you to different careers or expose you to like art and music programs to inspire creativity and innovation. And I feel like that sets a lot of people back. It set us back, I feel like. And what pushed us was the external motivation, internal motivation that kept us going, but it keeps a lot of people in the community kind of lose, like we talked about, they lose hope and they don't know about other resources available to help support them and their families. So my goal is to create that nonprofit organization that kind of provides those resources, talking about like what are different career options in life, and college is not the only option. So let's talk about college, but let's talk about trade school, let's talk about maybe community college, let's talk about like certificate programs, let's talk about labor jobs, specifically like how to get one and how to grow within a company even if it's a labor job. Like there's so many options and no one talks about them, and I think it sets people back and it makes people lose hope. And I feel like an organization of that type will have kids learn about it early, right? So if you're starting in like even third, fourth, fifth grade, like middle school, hey man, like come into the program. Let's learn about all these cool things people do. Let's learn about this new technology. Let's learn about building this. Let's learn about how we can grow. Let's learn about financial literacy, because that's a big thing too, where no one teaches you how to handle money, and you learn patterns or you learn habits and you learn management skills from your parents, and directly or indirectly you learn from them. So I think all these things are not provided in that community. So that's what I want to do, making sure that there's access to options and give people hope and just help support kids who are in my place who might not have an avenue to grow their creativity and their kind of meet their potential.
Yeah, that's definitely important. And also touching on the idea of like immigrant parents, because we grew up in an immigrant area as well as with immigrant parents, the financial habits of them pass on to us. But because they come from a smaller village, like our parents are from Mexico, from smaller towns, the spending habits, the earning habits are different than people who grow up in big cities and small towns, because when they come here, they think they need to spend certain amount of money on certain things or don't know how to actually budget or allocate their money properly. And I think that's very important because just as most people don't get a financial education in their early life, those early habits from their parents really influence their later life. Just like I feel like a lot of Hispanic, I would say, communities focus a lot on parties, and these type of parties are very big, and I would say, not to undermine the celebration, but unnecessary, because they spend a lot of money on like drinks, food, when it can be a smaller thing and still enjoyable. And I think that's also in tradition where, let's say for like women, there's like the quinceañeras, where that's usually an extremely big expense. And I've seen people talk about how they finance it with like family members that they're chosen to be like the the godparents of certain items. But I still think that's like a cultural thing where it's impacting the like the livelihood, the mindset that the children are getting. But oh, I remember having fun at these parties. Like I don't care about spending this amount of money, and I think that really is damaging in the long run. Can you talk about any like habits that you've seen that are pretty damaging in the long run for that we see as like our parents did when we were growing up or even now?
um I think the parties, yes and no. I feel like if you do it every so often, it's not too bad, but you also have to like understand and manage how much money you have. If you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to make a big party, like I wouldn't recommend taking out a loan for a party, you know, or ending up in a bad situation with family members. But like a quinceañera, if you've only had small parties and you have a quinceañera and you've been saving for it, then you saved your money, right? Have a big party, and I think that's fine. So I'm fine with that. I think from my family, or at least from my mom, I think it was like new outfits during like events. So we didn't have a lot of money. I think that's my thing with clothes. Like, you need a new outfit when you're having a nice event. So we had like a school event, like we're gonna have like an award ceremony. Like, if I had an award ceremony and I was gonna get an award, it's like we need to get you like, well, if that day we didn't have to wear uniform, then we'll get you a nice outfit. And we had to wear uniform, then it's just the uniform, make sure that you're all really nice, right? But if it was like a party, then making sure that you have a new outfit for the party. I think that's, you don't need a new outfit for every single party that you're going to, at least for your own. So that was a one that I feel like has stuck. Like, if it's like Christmas, for sure, if you didn't get a new outfit for like a party for Christmas, you have a new outfit, because you're gonna go, right? We're gonna be with all family. You want to make sure that you're nice and fitted, and no vasito fodongo, like you're not gonna go all messy. So for sure, even now, like I need a Christmas outfit. And I think I've tried to stay away from like, oh, it has to be an expensive or like really nice outfit, where it's just something that's comfortable or something that I'm gonna use in the long run. So now I've tried to do like PJs. I'm gonna get some PJs. I'm gonna be wearing PJs every day. I can buy that once a year, you know, to make it my outfit. Something else, I feel like, I think eating out was another one. I think it's become more of a thing where now my mom, well, because my brother and I don't live with her anymore, she eats out, I think, more. And I think going back, every time we go back, she's like, do you want food? And it's like, do you want to buy something? Do you want to buy something? It's like, let's go and eat, or let's go to a restaurant and eat. And I'm like, no. I feel like that caught on for a bit, but now I feel like I think about it. I'm like, I don't want to be eating out. Also, it's very unhealthy. So I'm like, I'd rather not. Yeah.
I think another topic that I wanted to ask is about, how do you feel about being a woman in terms of like your finances? Like, how do you think that shapes the way you think about money? Like, whether it be in your family, like how we discussed earlier, or in the real world of how people look at you when they think, oh, she probably doesn't make a lot, or like, oh, she doesn't necessarily have to work a lot. She just needs to find someone, like a husband, to take care of her. Because I know in the culture, the Mexican culture, it's always like finding a husband to take care of you, and you don't have to work, where you stay at home taking care of the family.
Definitely, I think the family thinks that, I think back then a lot. I don't know about now, but back then it was like I said, you need to learn how to cook, clean, learn how to take care of kids, because you need to find someone who you're gonna marry, and that person's most likely gonna support you, and it's gonna be a man. There's a lot of things wrong with that, but because I didn't want that, I knew that I had to work harder to make sure that I was financially independent, and kind of prove that I didn't need a man, or I didn't need a partner to basically survive in the world. Like, I can do it by myself. So, yeah, I've always worked hard to try to be independent. However, it can be very hard, especially being a student having no money. I feel like there's sometimes like expenses that come up that you don't expect, even if it's an emergency. Other than sometimes it's not an emergency, but it's unexpected. Then you're like, oh man, and you're like, what am I gonna do? So I think that's been hard. And going back to like what the family expects, I think I was like, oh yeah, you just, I think they still have the idea that no matter what point in my life, I can be financially independent, but if I find a man or I find a partner, it'll be better out for me. You know, like it doesn't matter. Like you can work hard, have your own money, but once you get married, you don't have to work hard anymore. You don't need to make money. And it's like, I don't think that's true. You still got to work hard. You still need to make money. At least in my case, I do want to make money because I'm like, I want to feel like I can provide for myself and for my family. It doesn't matter if I'm with someone else, right? And I don't know how other people see it. As for me, like, I don't know how they perceive me. I just know like what expectations or realities or perceptions of a family are. And yeah, I'll just make money. I don't expect, if I get married and that person has money, then nice. We'll combine the money and we'll, get what we need to get. And yeah, pretty much.
Hope you found the interview interesting. In the next part, we'll be discussing family expectations, vacations, credit, and more. See you there.